Scott, thanks for joining us on the show today. We are excited to have you, and I'm going to be honest with you. I am a little nervous. I've seen I haven't seen all the podcasts, but I've seen several of your podcasts. You do an incredible job, so I feel like I'm interviewing an expert today. But I am really excited to have you on, and it'd be good to talk with you. So.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Definitely not an expert, though.
Well, hey, it was funny. We talked to quite a number of people and quite a number of runners, and I think the one thing that I appreciate is that it's such a neat community, and I think the athletic community is a pretty neat community overall, because it's a group of people who will let you kind of in on the looking glass and being able to see whatever everyone else does, and be able to help each other out. That is one of the neat things. And I think what I've enjoyed asking, and I would love to, we'll get into how becoming ultra in a little bit, but I think the ability to help others is one thing that kind of sets this community apart.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, hey, would love to just have I'm not sure how many of our audience are very familiar with you. So we'd just love to kind of get to know you first and a little bit of your background, and just kind of introduce our audience to Scott Jones today.
All right. Well, I live in Colorado. It's about to snow, so I live in a really pretty place. I met my wife on a chairlift almost 10 years ago on a 4-foot powder day, and we have a small family. We have 2 little boys, a 4 and a 2-year-old, and we're kind of serial entrepreneurs, and pretty much everything we do has to do with either inspiring or teaching or motivating people to move, whether it's through our small event company out here, or the health and fitness and performance training that I do and I've done for 13 years, or with the podcast and a lot of the online stuff that we've gotten into in the last couple of years. So it's always this backdrop of get people active. I grew up in Southwest Florida. I was born in West Virginia. My dad was an awesome athlete. He played collegiate football and was my coach for a lot of the sports. I played baseball, basketball, and football growing up. Never ran more than 4 miles until I was 21, 22 years old. I was always running short and quick, And I played baseball in college, went on to get my master's at Marshall University in exercise science in the early 2000s. And I came out to Colorado for the first time ever, pulling a U-Haul back in 2003 to be the head of sports and performance for a facility that my head professor and advisor in grad school started this franchise. So I was heading up that program. So I've been in Colorado since 2003, and I've been working with athletes and training athletes and doing something in the space for a long time.
That's neat. Well, was there anything particular? What kind of? You said you didn't run longer than 4 miles for a long time. Was there anything particular that first kind of introduced you into the world of running and endurance?
Well, there are a couple of things. Because I was playing baseball and basketball and football, those are my first loves. And from a training standpoint, it makes no sense to go run 5-10 miles for most of the sports. So I just did do it. And I grew up in South Florida, and like running 2 miles in 90 degree and 80% humidity just seemed and felt silly. It really hurt. So, I moved. The colleges that I went to were in really, really pretty areas. I went to Appalachian State the first year, and we were in the mountains in the Appalachian Mountains near the Blue Ridge Parkway, and just getting on some trails and getting doing that as a hobby when I wasn't playing ball. And then I transferred to a small school in southern West Virginia. Same thing. We're right near the New River Gorge. The trails were amazing. Started mountain biking and really getting into the outdoorsy stuff. And it really happened in grad school. I started running with a buddy 2, 3, 4 miles every other day, playing a lot of hoops for fun. And I think I did a 3 or 4 mile run in town because I would go play basketball for like 5 hours, literally. And I knew I had good endurance, And then I moved to Colorado, and boom, every other person I met was an endurance athlete. So it was kind of you kind of have to dive in and see what you're made of out here and go on long treks and go experience things. And I was working, my clientele changed from a lot of performance and collegiate football players. And I used to train guys for the combine and stuff to a lot of endurance athletes, a lot of triathletes and people that wanted, recreational athletes that just wanted to get faster. And my professor that I studied under was brilliant with running economy. And I was administering VO2s every other day. And, so, I had a good traditional science background, and I started working and, just learning as much as I could about this stuff. So I had to test myself along the way. And by no, I'm not a great runner by any means, but I got to a point where I felt like I could teach people how by showing them. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into running, to the long way around it. So
that's really neat. Now, are you a trail guy, road guy, kind of combination of the both? It's just, I noticed some unbelievable trails out there in Colorado.
oh yeah, I mean, I'm a trail dude. I mean, I think that's when I really started liking running. It was when I got on trails. Even when I first started running, I remember the first 8-mile run I ever did was training for the Philly Marathon. And it was to this day, it was the hardest run I've ever done. Like the 8 miles on concrete. There's trails everywhere. I just didn't even know to go on them because it's the first year out here. And once I when I met my wife and started trail running a lot, it just something opened up. It felt more athletic. It felt more like one of the sports. I think a lot of reasons people don't like running is because they don't know how to get around the monotony to get fit enough. That's why I always was fit from playing basketball and chasing the ball around all day long, But trail running felt like that. And then you had these beautiful, amazing expanses and views that you could get to. And you always wanted to see what was around the next corner. It was more of an adventure. And it really, that's how it got started for me.
That's really neat. That's really neat. Oh yeah. In fact, we've interviewed a couple of, a few runners from Colorado here recently. And, I keep telling myself I've got to pick a race out there sometime soon. So let me ask you a question from an elevation standpoint. So for someone who's coming from sea level or from not much elevation at all, is it a big concern for someone to come out there for a particular event? Or is it just something that you just don't know what's going to happen until you get out there?
I mean, you'll feel the effects, no doubt. But if you're fit, you're fit. And I remember I was running Leadville marathon a few years ago with my wife, and she kills me in all these things. I just go out and have fun. and I was dying this day, but we met this guy. We were hanging out with him the day before, and he was so nervous about the elevation. And I mean, I think we had breakfast and lunch with him one day, and the whole topic was how can I do this? And so he was telling me all he would get was like the most he elevation gain he got in any of his runs in Texas was like 500 feet, and we're about to go climb like, I don't know, 3,000 to 5,000 feet or something like that. And he went out there and just killed it, no problems, because he's fit and he's pushed himself in. But you have a lot of advantages at sea level that we don't have up here. You can push yourself harder down there, So yeah, it's a huge variable. When I first moved out here, just to go snowboarding, if I wasn't hydrated, I would get nauseated and feel the effects. But you do adapt, and if you do the basic things, if you hydrate, if you eat well, if you get your sleep, and you come prepared with your fitness, then you'll be fine. For the most part.
Yeah, one of the guy who I like to follow, Lucho, Tim Wagner, I've heard him talk about the elevation, and he said, the thing like anything else is like, you can't worry or stress about things you can't change. I mean, it's like, he said, you just deal with it once you get there. I would imagine that's just one of those things, you just deal with it once you get there. So.
Oh, I mean, heat and humidity, those are bigger issues when it comes down to it, because you're just going to be you're going to feel uncomfortable if the altitude's getting to you. But altitudes, there's variables. If you come to Denver, this is 5,000 feet. If you go up to Vail or Leadville and do one of those, you're starting at 10,000 feet. So that's a whole different ballgame there too,
So a lot of the athletes that you coach is there something they have in common? Are they kind of all across the board from a distance standpoint? Or is there an area that you kind of feel like you coach more than others, or kind of all across the board?
It's all across the board. And I don't work only with runners. I work with recreational athletes, and I consider all my clients athletes in a way, shape, or form. And that's just a philosophical thing that really helps me push them in different ways. And but I feel like my expertise, I do really well with the economy and the efficiency. Just basic biomechanics. Form is a really big thing that I like to focus on with people that I'm seeing. Other, people that I'm not seeing on a regular basis, virtual clients, it's just the accountability. 90% of it becomes accountability. The information's everywhere. There's just a rapport that's important with people that aren't where I'm at, like building that rapport and trust and getting people to give me feedback so I can give them good information. That's really hard as a coach virtually. If you're not working with somebody that's giving you good and consistent feedback, you can't really help them. So, that's the basics.
Yeah. One of the things that I appreciate and I like to hear that I've heard you say, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is that you pretty much try anything and you're an entrepreneur at heart. And so a question I would have is, as you look back at the things you've done, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the coaching and everything else that you've done, are there particular people that you learn from, or who do you consistently learn from?
I go back always to my advisor and professor in grad school, because he's to this day the smartest and the way that he's charismatic by trade. I mean, he was a teacher for a long time, but he coached as well. But the way that he would teach the physiology of exercise was just still the best I've ever learned. So I don't go back to him physically, but I go back to the lessons that I learned from him a lot of times. I tell you what, I mean, like the best people that I learn from are the people that are doing similar things online. And those are the types of people I'm really reaching out to these days, because even though I have that experience and expertise, when you try to transition a business that's basically brick and mortar to an online type thing, there's just so much to learn to ramp up. So I've been really reaching out to other people that are doing really well with websites and with training and sharing their information in a different way. Because like we've already covered, like the information's out there. So people kind of have to just want to hear that information from you, and figuring out how to do that those are the types of people I've been reaching out to a lot lately. The mentorship thing is huge, man. And I honestly, I've reached out to people I would like to have as mentors, but it's not easy to find good mentors in such a niche area. Like, I'm doing such a unique thing, I think. So it's hard to find somebody that's done exactly this,
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard. I completely agree. Hey, one of the questions, and we get this a lot, and I figure you probably hear this a lot as well, but we sent out a survey the other day, and some of our runners who run our races, just asking what their challenges are. And I think at the top of the scale for every single one of them was probably motivation. How do you, and I struggle with that, because part of me understands, because when you're trying to get going, it's like it's hard to turn a wheel when you're not moving. And so I get the motivation part, but so it's hard to do something when we're not going somewhere. But at the same point, it's like, man, you gotta get going to get motivated. What kind of words of wisdom do you help people? Do you tell people as they like, man, I just struggle getting myself going. I just struggle getting motivated and getting started.
And that's a tough one, because I've never really had a hard time with motivation. I've had a hard time personally with focus. Like, I can get going. I can go bust out, X amount of blog posts and podcasts and write all day long and go work out and stay fit and spend time with my family and maybe not sleep for a few days. So the motivation has never been an issue. I think the focus is the issue, and being able to prioritize so that what you need to be motivated for seems attainable is really important. So instead of just saying, okay, this is my goal, but there's 800 things I have to do to get there, that's where the motivation drops off for a lot of people, because they see how much there is to do and they don't know where to start. That happens with me probably every 10 days. Like, I know I'm motivated, but I got to figure out what I need to put that energy towards. And then the other side of it is people are just being lazy and excuse ridden and soft. I mean, it's very simple. Like, if you need, I was the coach's son. Like, you can't be critical enough for me. Like, I seek out that criticism and that feedback from listeners and everything else. And there's a lot of ways I'm being soft with my own businesses online, and I know that's why I need to just suck it up and do it. I mean, there's a post on Athlete on Fire. It's called The Rut Buster. And it was just an article that I wrote. It's just 5 ways to get out of a rut. And, it's meant for motivation, but you can check it out. It's pretty cool.
All right. We'll do that. We'll be sure a link to that. One of the things kind of following up on that, I was telling someone the other day, I was watching, and this doesn't focus on anything, but I was watching a football practice the other day. And I just remember growing up when I had some coaches, I mean, it was like, what the things they said and how they said it. But at the end of the day, I knew where their heart was, and I knew they wanted to make us a better unit. They wanted to make us a better team, and they wanted me to be a better player and leader. And I knew that at the end of the day. And so I was like, well, that's just part of it. And the thing that, and I think you hit on, is that I think it's easy to get soft in those ways. And And sometimes what do we hear? You want to get some feedback, but do you want to hear truth in love, or do you want to hear truth at all? And I think a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, and it's a point, because you're right. Sometimes the answer is not easy, but it is kind of just suck it up and do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, football's a great example. My undergrad was in education. The reason I'm not teaching and coaching in a formal setting is because we're not allowed to do what they used to do in a lot of ways. Like, I'm not talking about being verbally abusive or overly negative. I'm talking about just being able to raise your voice if you need to, or say things that might hurt somebody's feelings for heaven's sakes every once in a while. And just, I saw how it was going, and I saw how my dad was finishing his career, how it was changing for him, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Once again, listeners, by the way, we're joined by Scott Jones from Athlete on Fire. Scott, a quick question for you. I really wanted to kind of dive into the Becoming Ultra, but I had another question. I know you've interviewed just a ton of folks and different athletes, and I know as many different stories as there are. I was just wondering, could you, after a lot of the stories you've heard, a lot of the success stories that you've heard, and people who've done some incredible things, are there some things that you've seen some of these athletes have in common? Are there some commonalities kind of across the board?
Yeah, I think I've interviewed a lot of endurance athletes. So a lot, well, and even the basketball guys and baseball guys, but the ability to consciously decide to visualize before training and before competing, just visualization. I mean, everybody talks about visualization, but the elites, all of them do it. And they talk about it, and they talk about the process that they use to visualize. So that's one big one. And then just the ability to prioritize, like I was saying before. I think the best athletes know what they need to do first, and they do that, and then they take care of the things that are fun, or the reason you're doing it second. Yeah.
Hey, would love to kind of get into the Becoming Ultra and just quick story of failure. I don't think failure, but of ignorance. As I did my first ultra, I think it was in 2008, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I went in completely uneducated, and it was the longest 11 hours, 37 minutes, and 25 seconds of my life. That's the only, of all the times I've ever run, that's the only one I ever remember is my first 50, and had no idea what I was doing. So I'm grateful, because I think it's really neat to be able to provide people an introduction to do something unique, something crazy. And I think, because for the longest time there was no information out there running ultras. It was just, well, you just run. And so I love the idea of being able to help people get started. Where did the idea of Becoming Ultra get started?
Somewhere in the brainage area. I ran ultra. I DNF'd, which because I ran on an ITBN. I had ITBS for like 4 months, and I just decided to try it still. But so I DNF'd, but I was coaching some athletes that were doing some longer distances, and it's intriguing, it's adventurous. I love big epic stories, and I think training for an ultra is one of those stories. But I'd interviewed so many ultra runners on Athlete on Fire, and I had the science background, and I had pretty good rapport with a lot of the athletes. So I found a couple of them that were coaches as well. So Ian Sharman and Michelle Yates were those coaches initially. And I've been doing some stuff with Matt Trappy, who's a videographer and photographer out here. And I pitched it as a partner deal. And I really wanted to do like more of the I wanted it to be like this documentary. I thought that'd be cool. But when I started, I realized, okay, everybody's doing documentary. The budgets are crazy. Matt was getting busy with his own stuff. So I really wanted, because I'd been podcasting, I wanted to just tell a story of a couple people who'd never done anything long. And I wanted to be able to see the progression into running their ultras. So that's what it turned into. I asked Matt if he'd help out, and then he had to drop off, and I got another buddy who's a videographer. I went out and helped film it. And we got this cool little 5.5 minute mini film, I guess. And then we have all of the archives of the journey to becoming ultra. And we're in the second season right now, and it's growing. Our viewer and listenership is growing, and the athletes, Crystal and Janet, are being coached by Liza Howard and Ian Sharman, who just happened to be the male and female winner of the Leadville 100 this year. So we got some really great coaches on there too. I can ask a lot of questions because I have enough information, even though I'm not an elite runner. I just felt like I could bring out some interesting ways to storytell for this piece. So start it.
That really is the beauty of it. I think that's the one thing that I get captivated. A lot of people get captivated by specific podcasts and yours. It's amazing to me standing at a start line is that it's not, it's not 500 runners. It's not 1,000 runners. It's really 500 stories and 1,000 stories. And it's one of those neat things. It's a lot of us have no idea what the person next to us overcome, what the person next to us went through in training. And so I really love being able to hear what those stories are. And, you just never know who's standing next to you, do you?
No, it's cool. And that's cool. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about running in general is, everybody's starting, there's 800 different ability levels, and you're all starting together. And there's not many other sports that happens. Like, you're not going to go play against Shaquille on a basketball court. It's not going to happen.
No, exactly. Hey, one of the, as you kind of final questions, we begin to wrap up, and we'll open it up to questions if anyone has any questions. But, are there some common mistakes as you begin to work with runners? It doesn't just be runners, but athletes. Are there some common mistakes that we kind of make as endurance athletes? Is it strength training? Is it overdoing it? Are there some common mistakes you kind of see a lot of your athletes deal with?
Yeah, I think just runners in general love running so much that they don't take care of the preventative stuff. And preventative and performance can intertwine as an adjective, but taking care of getting stronger. I don't know how many runners I've worked with that couldn't do a push-up. Like my 4-year-old can do 5 push-ups, So yeah, your arms are important for running. Like, you don't have to be built, you don't have to be ripped up, but you need to be strong everywhere. I always have a theory that people that are falling on the trails, their faces are busted up just because they're not strong enough to stop themselves. But anyway, so the strength piece, upper and lower body, like teach people how to do proper squats and lunges, and for runners specifically, it's getting away from just being a runner and looking at yourself as an athlete, because the best athletes in the world are the best runners in the world. If Randy Moss wanted to train for the 400 and 800, he'd probably be really good at it. He's a very efficient mover, and the best athletes are. So taking cues from athletes in different sports and applying it to ourselves, and just and realizing, like, running, the act of running, the range of motion and the strength, if you don't do things to improve the structure of your body, it'll catch up to you, and it won't be as enjoyable, and it can be. So those are the biggest ones.
Is it in your mind, when we look at strength training, when we look at that, is that stuff that we feel like that we can, is it, a couple times a week? Is it stuff that we can probably just do at home, or is it something the gym, or just kind of where's the best place to begin for us?
Well, doing it once a week, if you're not doing it at all, is better than nothing, of course. Yeah. But like, I have a client right now, she's a decent runner, but she hasn't done any, like, our first session was, okay, let's see what your form looks like when you get really tired. So I just had her run a mile really fast. And let's see how your form is doing basic squats and lunges and backwards lunges and some ankle exercises, ankle hops, and just seeing the rigidity of your ankles and how you kind of come off of the ground and how you buffer yourself when you're landing. And first session, fine, but you could tell how weak. Like, doing a handful of squats and doing a couple of push-ups, it was killing her. So she's a stay-at-home, well, not stay-at-home, she's a single parent, and she doesn't have all this time to go gym, work, all this stuff. So yeah, start at home, guys. Like, the gym is fine, but the gym is also the biggest excuse for most people who have a gym membership, because the act of grabbing all your stuff and remembering to go in there, checking in, getting ready, and then actually having a plan when you go in there, by the time you do all that stuff, you could have a 10-minute session that's going to make you a stronger and faster and better runner. So, squat, basic stuff. Nobody needs to reinvent the wheel if you're not doing anything. If you want to know specifics as it applies to you, I'm a huge guy on customizing plans, but if you're not doing anything, you're going to go look on Google what you should be doing, right? So if you're not doing anything, do something. If you need specifics, then that's something that I'm happy. That's what I do. I help people out with the specifics. But you open that door, like, we could be talking about this for forever. So
Well, I appreciate that. Hey, Scott, thanks so much for some time today. And it's fascinating listening to the podcast, and also fascinating to watch the Becoming Ultra guys continue to develop. So it's fun to see. And we'll for those of you who are watching live, we'll kind of stick around for a few minutes and open up for questions. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and end the podcast here. And so thanks for listening to the podcast. But we'll go ahead and open.
Here.